had the opportunity to compare the real combat characteristics of these vehicles firsthand, writes Business Insider. Soviet and American tanks, although they were created to counter each other, were made based on completely different concepts. Soviet T-series tanks, including the most common of them, the T-72, are smaller and lighter than the Abrams and have weaker armor. At the same time, their more compact dimensions make them a somewhat more difficult target. Soviet tanks also have an automatic gun loader, which has an ambiguous reputation. Once upon a time, the Abrams already fought against simple export versions of the T-72 in Iraq. In Ukraine, on the contrary, simple export versions of the Abrams are fighting against the most equipped Russian tanks. And yet, Ukrainian tank crews highly appreciate their Abrams. It is better than the T-72, T-62 and even the Russian T-90, the Ukrainian tank commander told the publication. Like other tanks and armored vehicles in Ukraine, the Abrams faces challenges from the constant threat of drones, mines and anti-tank missiles, forcing it into an unusual role, but the tank is still valuable. Along with Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, it has bolstered the combat capability of Ukraine's 47th Mechanized Brigade. It is a far superior system. The A1 may be old in the sense that it's been in our inventory for a long time, but it's far superior to anything the Russians have, said military expert Robert Greenway, who handled Abrams during his army service. Soviet-style tanks are smaller targets, harder to hit and easier to hide. This smaller size means less demand for materials, allowing Russia to produce more of them. The US took a different approach. We never set out to make as many tanks as the Russians. We just set out to make one that could take out a few Russian tanks and survive the process, Greenway explained. The Soviet Union wanted more for less with greater mobility, while the US, concerned with the need to counter the onslaught of Soviet armor, focused more on firepower and survivability. The design of the Soviet tanks, smaller, lighter and lower to the ground, make them somewhat harder to hit in certain conditions and more mobile, but the tanks lack the thick armor that protects the Abrams crews. A telling point, the Abrams ammunition is stored behind the turret, separated from the crew by a protective door to improve crew survivability. Soviet-style tanks store ammunition directly in the turret, which can be disastrous if the ammunition catches fire when it hits the vehicle. One of the Abrams' advantages is its depleted uranium shells, which have increased penetration and are more likely to cause a fire in an enemy tank after penetrating its armor. The Russians have such shells too, but they are not used often. A powerful gas turbine engine can propel the 60-ton A1 to 72 kilometers per hour, giving the tank sufficient maneuverability. However, the Abrams is difficult to maintain.
The Transportation Safety Board of Canada is investigating an incident involving a plane at the Halifax Stanfield International Airport, which one passenger described as a rough landing that sparked flames. Nikki Valentine, who was on the PAL Airlines flight, said passengers felt a massive rumble upon landing Saturday night. Amateur video from the scene showed the stationary plane tilted over to one side on the tarmac. Airport spokesperson Tiffany Chase said an Air Canada Express flight operated by PAL Airlines, arriving from St. John's, Newfoundland, experienced an incident upon landing at approximately 9:30 p.m. Air Canada spokesperson Peter Fitzpatrick said the Bombardier Q400 plane experienced a suspected landing gear issue after arrival and was unable to reach the terminal. Fitzpatrick said the crew and 73 passengers were offloaded by bus and nobody on board was injured. The incident temporarily halted flight activity at the airport.
نحن هون بالمدينة الصناعية بعذراء البلد. حصل انفجار، لحد هلا الانفجار غير معلوم، هو قصف طيران او انفجار داخلي ما بنعرف. ونحن مستنيين هلا فرق الهندسة لانه في بعض الذخائر اللي صار منفجرة، وفي كمان جثث لسه ما تعرفنا عليها شو هي، التحقيق اصلا ما خلص لهلا.
Security forces early on Tuesday were seen removing part of a missile that was reportedly launched from Yemen and intercepted by Israel. Curious residents gathered to look as members of a special police unit took away the debris that had landed in a street in Beit Shemesh, a city located about 30 kilometers, 19 miles, from Jerusalem. Israel's military said it intercepted a missile fired toward the country by Yemen's Houthi rebels late on Monday. Sirens were sounded across central Israel, due to the possibility of falling shrapnel from the interception, the military added. There were no reports of injuries from Magen David Adom, Israel's rescue service. The Houthis have been firing drones and missiles at Israel as well as attacking shipping in the Red Sea corridor, attacks they say won't stop until Israel agrees to a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Israel has carried out airstrikes in Yemen in response and has vowed to step up the pressure on the rebel group.
זה נפל על העץ, שעברת העץ?
לא, מה זה דבוק לו שם? שערות סבתא האלה.
דודי הפתעה,
הוא היה פה ראשון.
כן, תכף שנייה אני ראיין אותו.
זה אנחנו מתחילים.
איזה הפכה יש לכם? למה אתם בכלל...
מה זה שאומרים לך, אתה יודע?
אני מתכוון, הוא האמת.
שואל לך אתה יודע. שואל לך אתה יודע.
אולי ניקח אותם הולכים או לא כדאי?
לא, זה לא צריך.
לא? אז אולי ניקח אותו רעיון, תעיר לי?
בא לך.
גם מגיע, רק
כן, אין בעיה, אין בעיה.
יוסי שטר. תלכי בטלפון פית הסופים, הוא 23, הכל. הכל 23, 24, סליחה. מה אתה צריך?
חכה, בוא.
מי רוצה שאני תעשו את הכיחים? מה יש לנו בחוק?